Hello, children. Pop quiz. Who can tell me the difference between these three words? And remember, no cheating.
Deus respaldium.
All right, seriously, I just wanted to go over these definitions because as we go through the history of anarchy and the people who shaped it, we're going to find that yes, there are common roots and parallels between anarchy, socialism, and communism. But there are still very distinct differences between the three, no matter how minor they may seem. Secondly, I want to reaffirm this is not a political channel. This is not a political video. We are not here to discuss which is better, which one should be instituted. That's not what we're doing. Okay? The Den is a place for everyone to come in, relax, ignore the outside world for a bit, chill out, find some friends. We're kind of like the Kit Kat Club in Cabaret, just with. You know what? I'm not finishing that sentence because it's not accurate anymore. Anyways, when I do these videos, I do research because I want to make sure that you guys are as informed as I can possibly leave you. But that's a lot of information for you to absorb and remember. So I'm going to condense it down. We're going to go over basics. So let's make this a matter of permanent record. And the first question that goes on record is, what is socialism? And if you ask a lot of people, especially here in the US, you're probably going to get a long and probably very angry rant about how it's a dictatorship, no one is allowed private property, no one can own anything, the government tells you what to do, the government takes all your money. Incorrect. And I'm going to give you 5 seconds right now, Bobby. Calm down, take a breath, get a drink of water, stop writing the hate comment, come back when you're ready. I'll wait. All right, you still with us? Okay, let's continue. Now remember, we're here for the core definitions. So these are the ideas as they were presented, as they were being written about at the time, not all the stereotypes in the history and the evidence of why they are so easy to corrupt that we have seen throughout the years. We are stripping all that down, going back to the blackboard. Blackboard. As written, bare bones basic socialism is simply a system of government where there isn't a government. There is no state. And yes, there also is no private property. And that's the phrase that seems to get in everyone's britches. That's what rubs everyone the wrong way. No private property. Well, for the purposes of this video and for these definitions to make sense, we have to understand that there is a difference between private property and personal property. As defined in the original texts and ideas, private property is anything that a worker needs in order to do their job and produce whatever it is that they're supposed to produce. That's your hammers, your shovels, your uniforms, okay? More importantly, it's the farms, lands, factories, mines, everything that would normally be owned by, say, I don't know, a corporation or a land baron, things like that. Personal property, on the other hand, are things that are bought with those wages in order to pursue a passion, hobby, or general interest. Things that make a person the person they are. That'd be your cooking utensils, your colored pencil, your fucking musical instruments, your fetish gear. Okay? The first big sticking point after we get past those definitions is that when I said private property is everything, that a laborer needs in order to produce whatever goal their product is, that means everything, which includes housing, food, and clothing. Oh, hi! So that was actually meant to be the intro of part two, but it started going a little longer than I'm comfortable with an intro going, so we're just gonna cut it off and make it a supplement video. Now, notice the giant anarcho communist star next to me. I would put up a socialist and a communist flag, except for the fact that they don't have flags. Well, they do, but we're going to get into that in part two. Anyways, now expanding on our basic ass definition of socialism that I just went over, where does it come from? For most people, the answer may or may not be surprising. You see, it comes from our good friend, Karl Marx. Yes, before he ever espoused communism, he actually was a socialist. And that's because his idea of communism grew out of socialism. And I'm using my clipboard because I just showed you that giant whiteboard and I said there's a lot of stuff for us to go over. So, let's see here. Carl here, in analyzing capitalism, came to the conclusion that social ownership was necessary to resolve the contradiction of socialized production and private appropriation of surplus value. That productivity gains from the substitution of variable capital, i.e., labor, would cause labor displacement to outstrip the demand for labor, leading to stagnant wages for the working class, rising unemployment for the working class, rising property income for the capitalist class, and a further overaccumulation of capital, thus requiring a socially owned, highly automated means of production. Now, breaking that down to make sure that we understand, let's take two companies. Company A decides it wants to maximize profit but minimize the cost of labor. So it starts to rely on outsourcing or automation. Things like factories or assembly lines or AI. Yeah. Now we have the problem that the person or board of shareholders that owns that corporation are putting more and more and more profit into their pockets, while the laborers who are still there or have to upkeep this automation somehow are getting paid less and less and less and less. Cost of living goes up, the wages go way down. Sounds a bit familiar, don't it? Company B, on the other hand, Company B is what is known as an employee owned company, which means that no matter their level, no matter how long they've been there, these employees are all allowed to buy controlling interest in the company or at least some sort of stocks. They have say on what the company does, where it goes, and they profit off of the company doing better. This in turn means that the better they do, the better the company does, the better they get paid. This is actually an age old argument, which is if we give everyone everything they need to survive, aren't they going to just be lazy and not want to work? And this idea, in my opinion, is actually beautifully summed up in a movie. It's a Wonderful Life has a scene where George Bailey is arguing with Mr. Potter, who has just taken control of the Bailey Savings and Loan. In Mr. Potter's opinion, he believes that if they give loans out to friends, family, and every Tom, Dick, and Harry who comes to get one, then they're going to be lazy and not want to work anymore, relying on handouts. George Bailey, on the other hand, argues that if we give out those loans and make sure that these people have the food they need, the clothes they need, a house to keep them warm, and we make them happy, they're going to want to work more in order to make more money because if they have more money, they can buy more things and thus they become a better consumer. And if they are a better consumer, they are a better citizen. Do I agree with all of that? No. But I do agree that if people are comfortable they're going to be productive, right? Glad you're with me. Now, continuing back on our notes. Do. As I said, socialism calls for the social ownership of private property. What does that mean? Well, social ownership means workers' unions, a co op, any sort of group of society, instead of just one person or an organization like a board of shareholders owning the company and controlling all of the profit from it. It also calls for an end to social classes, except for the fact that we'd still have the working class and the non working class, but that's neither here nor there. Communism, which again, Karl Marx, takes it a step further. Instead of the socially owned private property, it's commonly owned. Commonly owned simply means that everyone owns it. There is no workers' union controlling that mine. There is no society controlling that mine. The mine's there. Anyone can go into that mine and grab whatever they need, labor for it, and receive wages for it. Common ownership is best exemplified in your everyday life as public libraries, public parks, freeware, any open source software like OBS that I'm using to record this. Things that anybody can go out and grab. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to talk to anybody. You don't have to have a license to do it. Again, on paper, sounds amazing. The problem comes when we introduce the human element. A comment on my last video said that anarchy, once the dust clears, inevitably becomes communism. Close, but not quite. You see, the problem is with socialism and communism, the goal is for people to have what they need in order to be happy so that they can work, and to work so that they can earn money, and they can earn money so that they can pursue a passion. That sounds great on paper. And I'm going to keep repeating that because I want you to understand that the key phrase here is on paper. Once you put it into practice, the poison comes in. Every time someone gains an iota of power, human nature kicks in and they want control. They want to make sure that that is how it's going to work. But that is how it's going to work doesn't mean the rules as written. It means the rules as they say it should work. We have countless examples of communist governments where they became dictatorships. We have a few examples of socialist governments, which are actually closer to democracies than socialism. You can name any country you want that comes to mind when I say that, but we're just going to leave it. And under both socialism and communism, it means that a worker is entitled to the wages of their labor, which means if you do 7 hours of work, you get 7 hours of wage. This is why they cut out shareholders, CEOs, company presidents, things like that. In the ideas of socialism and communism, if you don't work, you don't profit. You can't own land, have other people work it, and then claim that all of the money that comes from that product goes to you. They see it as not just unfair, but as, in fact, evil, a sin, a crime against human nature. And I think, if we're all being honest with ourselves, on a human level, that sounds great. Yeah, if I do the work, I should get the money. Why should I be working and somebody else getting the money? But again, in practice, not always how it works. And when it comes to these three systems, as far as being a political way of thought, anarchy is actually the youngest. Yes, I did say that Aristotle and Plato used it to question things back in ancient Greece. However, neither of them said, hey, we should just be anarchists. So, what does anarchy look like as a political statement? Well, under anarchy, there is no government, there is no money, there are no classes. No one holds any power over another person. And because of this, there's no way to extort another person. There's no way to oppress another person. Under anarchy, any group, any amount of cooperation, and any person choosing to follow the word of another is completely voluntary. That's all it means, is that if you choose to follow someone, it's because you believe in your heart that is what's best for you and for the people you care about. If you choose to lead people, it's because that's what's best for you and the people you care about. It's not given by a government. As I said in part one, there are actually a few phrases associated with anarchy, the most famous of which being no gods, no masters. Another is do as you wish, do what you want, which I feel goes well with this description from Errico Malatesta's Anarchy. The freedom we want for ourselves and for others is not an absolute metaphysical abstract freedom, which in practice is inevitably translated into the oppression of the weak, but it is real freedom, which is the conscious community of interests, voluntary solidarity. We proclaim the maxim, do as you wish, and with it we summarize our program, for we maintain, and it doesn't take much to understand why, that in a harmonious society without government and without property, each one will want what he must do. In addition to, in my opinion, beautifully summing up anarchy, this also helps me illustrate a point that I am hoping that you will keep in mind throughout this series, which is my personal adage of people will always be people. If you were to take a person and put them in any sort of social situation, eventually their true nature is going to shine through. And that can be a good or a bad thing. On the negative side, yes, there are people who do like to see others suffer, and they're going to want to always be in control. They're going to want to be the one who always gets attention, however it comes out. There's always going to be negative people. You're also going to find that people are going to have a calling. If we go all the way back to when we first started living in tribes, you're always going to find that people have always wanted to help the people they care about. Whether it's hunting for meat, cooking the food, making the clothes, healing the sick, practicing whatever spiritual beliefs that they feel and teaching it, passing it down to generations, writing, poetry, philosophy, that will always happen. That doesn't come from a government. That comes from us. People will always be people. A doctor or a healer is simply someone who saw others suffering and wanted to help. A cook is someone who helps others with food. A writer has something to say, something inside them that they want to share with the world, and that's the way to do it. And through these things, through these people coming together, writers writing, cooks cooking, healers healing, teachers teaching, we begin to form a group. And when we form that group, we form expectations of what the people that we want in this group to follow, how they help out, how they act, what we consider acceptable, what we consider unacceptable. And that becomes a culture. And a culture eventually becomes a society. And with the society, if we so choose, then we choose the people we feel best to lead that society, to help us make the decisions, to help us learn what we need to help us be the best that we can be, to make sure that the group not just survives, but thrives, flourishes, grows, lasts. And if we do that, that is a government. A government comes from society, comes from people, not the other way around. And I feel like that's a point that gets forgotten a lot in this day and age. There are people who seem to think that the government defines society, defines people. That if a government tells you that you can't be this, you can't say this, you can't do this, you can't believe this, then that's how it is. No, that's in fact a lie that goes against every law of human nature. In fact, and you know how I hate getting religious on this channel, if you want to make it a biblical argument, human nature is such that our very first act of choice was to rebel against not just a government, but the very thing that created us and said, do not do this thing. And then we went and did it anyways. But that is, in my mind, the essence of us. We're contrarian little things. We don't like being told what to do. We don't like being told we can't do things or that we can't read things, we can't believe things. But that's not to say that we don't also hold as a society, as a whole, that there are things that are inherently bad. We absolutely have things that we can agree as people, as human beings, shouldn't happen, should never have happened. And if you do them, then not only do we not count you as a citizen, but for some of us, we don't even count you as a human. Because if you're not going to act like one, why should we treat you like one? And with those two rules in mind, I'll see you all in part 2. Thank you for listening.